topic, I'd first like to thank Dr. Jaya ma'am for helping with the PPT and Kode ma'am for pushing me to present today. No, I'm happy that she pushed me. Thank you. So my topic for today is complications of preeclampsia. I will conclude in the complications. So I'll talk about two complications: pulmonary edema and subcapsular liver hematoma. So let's begin with pulmonary edema. So pulmonary edema is a condition characterized by accumulation of excessive fluid in the interstitium and the alveoli of the lung as a result of an alteration in one or more of the Starling forces. So it is particularly higher in elderly, multigravid and chronically hypertensive patients with an incidence of 0.08% to 1.5% of all the pregnancies and 3.5% of all preeclampsia pregnancies. So by the incidence we can already understand it is very significant when it is associated with preeclampsia. So in normal pregnancies it is 1.5% and in preeclampsia it is approximately 3 times that of the normal pregnancies. That is the point of stress over here. And it is a very, very significant cause of maternal perinatal mortality and morbidity, which is already told by Amit. So let's come to the pathophysiology of pulmonary edema. So it has 4 mechanisms, the most important one being the endothelial damage. Where what happens in endothelial damage is that there is decreased colloid osmotic pressure, which leads to a leakage of fluid into the pulmonary interstitium, eventually leading to pulmonary edema. The other 3 mechanisms are acute hypertensive crisis. In the second stage of labor, when the mother is trying to push the baby out of the uterus, she invariably performs the Valsalva maneuver, which causes an increased afterload on the heart, leading to pulmonary edema. And in the third stage of labor, when there are sudden contractions of the uterus, there is an increased venous return and a decreased cardiac output, which causes an overload on the heart again, and which leads to a back pressure on the lungs, causing the fluid to leak again and leading to pulmonary edema. So, how will the patient present to us? So, it is basically a respiratory condition, the condition of the lungs. So, the patient comes with respiratory predominant symptoms, which will be breathlessness, orthopnea, cough with expectoration, agitation, and in very severe cases, the patient will have a pink frothy sputum, which is diagnostic of pulmonary edema. Then, what will we look for in the patient? So, on general examination, we will find tachycardia, tachypnea, decreased oxygen saturation, a high BP of more than 160 systolic and 110 diastolic. And on respiratory examination, we will find widespread crepitations and wheeze. And in some patients, we can also find a history of IV fluids for some other medical cause, which will cause a fluid overload. So, you might be wondering where are the investigations. So, the treatment has to be put first because it is a medical emergency. So, before doing any investigations, we have to start with the treatment, and then in the process, we have to perform the investigations. So, as it is a medical emergency, we have to start with a multidisciplinary approach. We have to put the patient in the ICU and involve the intensivist. And we have to first put up the patient in a propped up position. Stop delivering any IV fluids. No IV fluid should be given, or it may land up in pulmonary edema. Then oxygen therapy should be started immediately at 4 liters per minute. And central hemodynamic monitoring and central venous pressure monitoring should be performed. Then moving on to the pharmacological treatment. We should start on IV furosemide 40 mg initially, which can be repeated if it is needed again. Then if the BP has not yet been controlled, then we can start with IV labetalol, which we have already, Jairaj, as we know, labetalol, 20 mg over 20 minutes. And if the BP has still not been controlled, then we can start with mechanical ventilation. So then we have to look whether the patient has delivered or not. If the patient has not delivered, then we have to perform an emergency delivery by cesarean section after making the patient hemodynamically stable. Because already ma'am has told us that if the patient is not stable, we cannot perform cesarean section or she may bleed. So if the patient is in the second stage of labor, we can shorten the second stage of labor by instrumental delivery, either forceps or ventus. So coming to the investigations, these have to be performed along with the treatment, as I already said. So we can perform the chest X-ray PA view, where we can see the characteristic curly B lines as we can see here, the arrow, in the peripheral part of the lungs. And we can also see peribronchial cuffing and perihilar haze. So the second investigation is 2D echo, which is used to differentiate the cardiogenic causes and the non-cardiogenic causes of pulmonary edema. So in the cardiogenic causes, we will see an evidence of left ventricular diastolic dysfunction and postpartum cardiomyopathy, which is absent in non-cardiogenic causes. And a CT scan can also be done. So I think I've spoken a lot about pulmonary edema. So it would be helpful for you all, if not in ops, then at least in medicine, where you can write a short note. So coming to the second topic, which is subcapsular liver hematoma. So unlike pulmonary edema, it is a very rare complication, but but at the same time you have to remember that it is a very highly morbid and highly morbid and mortal condition. So whenever this patient comes, it is very rare, but whenever the patient comes, we have to be on our toes. We cannot do anything which will, we cannot make any delay. So we have to do everything fast. So the incidence of subcapsular liver hematoma is 1 in 67,000 of all pregnancies and 1 in 2,000 of all preeclampsia pregnancies. It is particularly higher in patients with HELLP syndrome and severe preeclampsia, and it usually occurs in first 15 hours postpartum. So coming to the pathophysiology of subcapsular liver hematoma. So it is not actually well known, but the proposed mechanisms are: there is a vascular injury which causes fibrin deposition in the hepatic sinusoids, which causes an increased liver enzymes which aid in the formation of subcapsular liver hematoma. And the second mechanism is there is microangiopathy during pregnancy, which when combined with endothelial dysfunction, it results in an inappropriate activation of coagulation cascade, which leads to a subcapsular liver hematoma. So how the patient will present to us. So in pulmonary edema, it was basically a respiratory symptom. So this is a condition pertaining to the liver. So we will have predominant GI symptoms, which will be epigastric pain, right upper quadrant pain, which may radiate to the shoulder, along with nausea, vomiting, and abdominal distension. So what we will look on the patient is, in general examination, we will see tachycardia, tachypnea, and there can be evidence of jaundice if it is associated with HELLP syndrome, which can be seen by yellow sclera, and there is a tenderness in the right upper quadrant. So coming to the investigations, so if the patient is diagnosed antenatally, then we can see USG, we can perform a USG abdomen or an MRI, where we can see an evidence of infracapsular hematoma or free fluid in the abdomen. And if the patient has been diagnosed in postpartum, then we can also perform a CT scan as shown in the figure, where we can see subcapsular liver hematoma. So if the HELLP syndrome is suspected, as already we have learned about it, we can perform LFTs, CBCs or PBS for the components of HELLP syndrome, and we can also see an increased prothrombin time and high D-dimer levels. So coming to the treatment of subcapsular liver hematoma, again it is a multidisciplinary management because it is a highly mortal condition. So if the patient is diagnosed antenatally, you have to first stabilize the patient and expedite the delivery immediately and start conservative management, where we have to start with intensive medical support with IV fluids, replacement of blood products, as already Shefali has explained it to us, and treatment of HELLP syndrome and preeclampsia, and administration of recombinant factor 7A. And if the patient is hemodynamically stable, we can also perform a percutaneous embolization of hepatic artery. So coming to the surgical management, the surgical management is indicated in patients who are hemodynamically unstable due to hepatic rupture or due to active intra-abdominal bleeding. So what we do in surgical management is that a hemostatic mesh is applied to the bleeding surface of the liver with omental suturing to the bleeding surface. The other two options are hepatic resection and hepatic artery occlusion. And if the hemorrhage cannot be controlled and acute liver failure occurs, the last resort is liver transplantation. Thank you.